Pierre, thank you very much for joining us today. How are things in Monaco?
Hey Jimmy, great to be on again. It's a little bit on the hot side, but other than that, nothing I can't handle. So it's great to be here and enjoy the summer a little bit.
So every time I speak to you, you're in a different city or a different country. And just in the past month, you were in Australia, China, Japan, and now you're in Monaco. You're like a traveling gypsy.
I am, yeah. My suitcase sees a lot of miles every year. I probably need to buy a new one every year because there's some wear and tear on it. But no, I like traveling around. But now, for the remainder of the summer, I look forward to spending a significant time in Sweden with my mother. So that should be quite fun. So.
So a lot of your travels has to do with uranium, and this is where I want to focus our discussion today. But before we do that, just for the benefit of viewers who might not know you or might not know your firm, WMC, maybe you can just give a brief overview of WMC and what exactly they do.
Sure. Yeah, we're a Dutch commodities merchant. So I started out with nuclear fuel in 2016. There was three Dutch gentlemen that started it, and then in 2019, another ex-chemical colleague and I joined, and we've been quite busy since. So like a couple of years following that, we expanded into battery materials too. So we don't not only trade uranium and nuclear fuel today, we also do. Lithium, cobalt, manganese, copper, nickel. So anything energy transition related is where we want to focus on. So yeah, we've grown quite a bit. We're about 40 people. We have interns now. Lots going on in the Amsterdam office when I stop by there, and also have some recent hires on the nuclear fuel side that we're very happy with over in the US side. So it's no, things are going well. It's good, exciting times.
So that's great. So why don't we move on now and focus on uranium? And this is where you spend all your time, specifically in the spot market. How would you characterize the activity in the uranium spot market year to date?
Yeah, I would say up until very recently, it was almost like a sleeping pill. There was not much going on. There was still, I mean, there's been so much uncertainty where first, especially for US utilities, when first there was talks of Russian sanctions, and then, okay, there's going to be sanctions, and this was previous government. And then now there's going to be sanctions, but there's going to be a waiver process. We don't know what that looked like. Then the Russians retaliate with their own ban, and they have a waiver process, which people have no insights into how that's going to work out. Finally, it seems the kinks gets worked out, and then we got a new U.S. government, and then I guess the keyword so far this year is tariffs. So that created an additional and rather large layer of uncertainty for utilities. So they've been really on the sidelines for a long time, and when there's no real term activity or utility activity, it's hard for the spot market to find any direction, especially not when you don't have investors and really engaged either, because they're also on the sidelines. They don't really know what's going to go on with the financial markets overall, not just uranium, but overall global economy. So it's, I would say, people have been holding their breath, and they're probably starting to turn blue around now, and we're just waiting for some kind of clarity. But yeah, now there's all sorts of geopolitical issues that might be spreading from not just to Russia and Ukraine. It looks like the Middle East is a little bit of a hotbed now too. So yeah, who knows where this is going? But it's been it certainly has had an impact on the spot market that it's been very quiet overall.
So the word that you mentioned a couple of times was uncertainty, and this is pervasive everywhere we look now in the financial markets, and we especially saw that in Q1 with numerous U.S. companies coming out and reducing guidance, all because of this economic uncertainty due to the trade wars, et cetera. How has this uncertainty impacted the volumes in the spot market? Where do we stand year to date? We're already halfway through the year.
Yeah, I think looking at it like around mid-June, we were about just 25 million pounds. So if you extrapolate that, we're going to get to about 50 million, which is on the lower end. I mean, if you took it 10 years ago, it would be a great year. But then we got spoiled in the early 20s when all the financial interest came into the market, and we saw years of 100 million pounds trading. So it's I wouldn't say it's completely quiet, but it's certainly less than it has been at least couple of years ago when there was quite a lot of activity from financial players. And yeah, now we're kind of, again, like I mentioned, it's like people are kind of just holding their breath and waiting to engage a little bit more. But hopefully we'll get there. Starting to see signs of it anyway. But so I would certainly say that the overall uncertainty is clearly having an impact on volumes themselves. Yeah.
So the big news recently was SPRAT raising $200 million for the SPRAT Physical Uranium Trust. it sounds like it was well received. How do you think this is going to impact the spot market in the near term and when we look further out in the next couple of months?
Yeah, I was funny enough. I was in, or not funny enough. I was in China. I didn't have access to my some of the apps I normally do for work. So all of a sudden, my regular messages start blowing up on my phone, and I didn't realize why. And it was then I got the news from some colleagues that yeah, SPRAT raised 200 million pounds. Oh, sorry, $200 million. So that certainly had an impact. And I would say, well, the immediate effect was that the spot market jumped $5. So that would be like 8%. So that clearly had a bit fairly significant impact. And then it kind of stayed at that level and even crept up a little bit more now. So that it certainly gets people's attention, especially when they've been so quiet that it has been so far. And the not only, like I mentioned, has utilities been on the sidelines, but also the investment community really hasn't been able to engage really either. And then you have something like this, which is by far the single biggest inflow of capital into spot that we've seen since the beginning. Clearly, it's going to have a big impact. So I would say it certainly jolted things into life. Now, some of the immediate actions are wonderful traders that they're one trick ponies that they're just gonna buy as soon as they see spot has some money, they front run and they buy and then they turn around and offer it. So we don't really necessarily want to bite on that, but it certainly it adds to the immediate impact of this anyway, and that you will see in the spot price. So it certainly was a jump right away, and then yeah, we'll see where it's going to go next.
And you and your team were very busy as soon as that, or shortly after that deal was announced. And I was surprised in one day you were able to acquire 650,000 pounds, which is a big amount. Maybe you can just speak to that and also speak to what volumes are available in the spot market at this time.
Yeah, I mean it's when things have been as quiet as they are, people don't they tend to have their cards pretty close to the chest and not say kind of what they want to do. But then, okay, now there is some clarity. Here's a player has a lot of capital that looks to or is looking to invest and buy some pounds. Then people put their cards even closer to the chest, and it's like no one wants to be the first one to sell. So it took a few days to get anywhere, but then yeah, like you mentioned, on the one day we were fairly successful and shored up quite a bit of material. They have a lot more to go, but we're also not in a rush at all to spend any of this. We're certainly just gonna chase something just to inflate it and see it come crashing down again. So yeah, we'll see how we go from here. But it certainly yeah, it got people excited for a bit, and it actually it's good to see a little bit of activity in there. So.
And can you speak to the nature of those sellers that you've seen so far? Are they producers or financials or?
Yeah, we prefer not to mention which types of sellers there are now. Overall, I think I mean we've been mentioned that from time to time that the absolute majority is from intermediaries, so they obviously don't have mines themselves, but through offtakes or inventories or whatever they might have, they sit on some inventories, and those are the ones we tend to get to on short notice because they are basically mobile inventories. From producers, it takes a little bit more time because they have clarity a few months ahead, maybe that, oh, we're getting this out of the ground now. We're starting to ship it over to one of the converters. It'll be there 3, 4 months from now. So even though we can agree on buying something with that much notice, we prefer a little bit near-term delivery. So that's what we've been focusing on for now. But we will certainly have discussions with any suppliers too. But I would also say that the list of suppliers that have any material available in the near term is extremely thin. If there is even one single name on there, I doubt that there is. But yeah, well, I'll find out. We'll talk again in a couple of months, and I'll let you know.
And I'm sorry, when you said near term, you prefer delivery in the near term. Can you quantify that?
Yeah, it's I mean, like we prefer to have it in up to 2 months out, maybe. I mean, we can certainly extend it longer, especially if there's an entity with good credit rating and the risk. Now, if it's a junior, we prefer to see that the pounds should be at the converter facility before we take possession of it. But yeah, it's not a strict rule, but we prefer to keep it as short as possible.
And Pierre, what about the buy side? Can you speak to what's happening on the buy side? Are there a lot of buyers in the market right now? A lot of utilities?
Spot market wise, yeah, I mean, when we dipped down to low 60s even, which was, give it a couple of months ago now or a month ago now, then we saw actually quite a few utilities step in and bought fairly meaningful quantities too. And they were purely opportunistic. They're well covered for a few years to come. They're just like, yeah, we wanted to beef up our strategic inventories because we know that this is a good price. And they also knew that with in the low 60s spot price and term price in the 80s, you can certainly make a carry trade work. And they have quite big balance sheets, and they don't have a problem to put stuff on their balance sheets. Then why not do it? So obviously though those moves looks pretty good right now. So I congratulate them. I was the first one to do it and say, hey, that's a great move. You should buy as much as you can. And I think the ones that could have. And even though fuel buyers might think, they all probably know that these are very good prices. Not every utility can or want to put that on their balance sheets either because of other restrictions that they might have. So
And the utilities that have been buying or taking advantage of these lower prices, can you speak to their jurisdiction? Are they Americans, Europeans, Asians?
they're on all over the globe, I would say. There's not more one from one specific jurisdiction than others. So it's a fairly good spread on that.
And so let's move on now and talk about the long term market. It's also been relatively quiet, around 25 or 26 million pounds of traded year to date versus 110 million pounds in all of 2024. Maybe you can give us some color on what's happening in the term market. I know you spend most
Yeah,
of your
that
time in the spot market, but
Yeah. Yeah, no, the difficult thing with the term market is like the spot market is frustrating because it's so opaque. And then you take the term market and it's a few levels more opaque than that because all these contracts are bilaterally negotiated. There's no broker service. You can talk to the price reporters if you want to, but certainly not everything is reported. And some of them could be just an ongoing relationship. You have a 10-year contract that has a couple of years left, it's about to fall off. It's kind of like hockey players, football players, I guess. You just start talking, and it's like if you're going to be an extension, is it's not going to be extension. So the fact that you have a few years left on it, it's like a framework for negotiation. So I've been at Chemical for a long time, and the blend and extend like talks that you have, though, they're quite meaningful. And if when you do a large extension like that, it's you don't necessarily report it right away. It might be at the end of the year, or obviously if you have a price level that's been there for a long time, and then you add something more to it, so the existing price level can have an impact on the newer one. So it doesn't qualify as a brand new price point either. So there is some murkiness in that, which makes it very difficult for price reporters and very difficult for anyone who's going to try to sort of sift through the information and figure something out of it. So it is very, very difficult to say anything that. So that sure, when you say that 26 million pounds, and if you would told me in January that, oh yeah, by mid-June we're going to be at 26 million pounds, I would just like, that's ridiculous. But knowing what the year has been like so far, and utilities haven't been sitting on their hands, they've been quite a lot of talk of them coming out. So I think there's quite a bit of negotiations going on, and they might just not have been inked yet. And even if they have been inked, they haven't necessarily been reported yet. So I expect that number to come up quite a bit. Where we're going to land, if it's going to be 160 million pounds, that probably not. But as an anecdote, I mean, Cameco's been saying on multiple recent investor conferences that they had their marketing team in China and was speaking to all utilities in China, and they were discussing contract from today up until 2050. So I don't know how big those contracts are. They're obviously going to be quite meaningful. Cameco doesn't even have mines that are going to operate in 2050, but Chinese utilities are willing to contract with an entity that doesn't even have mines. And if Cameco doesn't have mines, very few other entities will. Sure, Olympic Dam is probably going to be around, but it all depends on what Copper is doing, what they decide to do with that one. But that gives you a little bit of an idea of the appetite, and I can't imagine that if and when those contracts gets agreed on. I mean, they're clearly not in the 26 million because I mean, one of those contracts can probably be 26 million alone, but we'll just have to see. So there's a lot of uncertainty around that number. So I would caution to people who sort of look at them as the only price point and then try to extrapolate. It's just it's very murky, and you just got to be careful with the garbage in, garbage out stuff. So keep it in mind and look at it. But I would expect it to be fairly fair bit higher than what it is right now anyway.
Yeah, you raised a few good points there. And one thing I will say about the Chinese, this is why they keep kicking our butts and everything because they think so long term. Whereas we in the West, we're thinking about this week, next quarter. But the other thing I want to bring up is it sounds like there's still, it's what we talked about earlier. There's all this uncertainty. And because of that uncertainty in the financial markets, there's a lot of, I guess, a lack of activity in the term market, and this is why utilities are holding back. Would you agree with that?
It certainly is one aspect, 100%. It's and then yeah, whether the uncertainties or the lack of action is like I mentioned before, like the fuel buyers might want to go out for a long time and say this is a great time to purchase uranium. Can I please have a budget allocated to it or not? Or then you're gonna get on the radar screen, and if you're a big utility in the US or anywhere else, I mean, it's not going to be on the top of the agenda. It's like, do you need it right now? It's like, oh, if you don't need it right now, just hold off because we got tariffs to deal with, we got potential sanctions or no sanctions to deal with, we got global uncertainty to deal with. So there is so many other things that takes the bandwidth of decision makers that you might not get the attention of them that you need. And a lot of the fuel buyers, they would need approval from boards, and then to go out and collect some offers, and then they need another board meeting to get approval to go with one. So it's a 3 to 4 month process. And then and if it's not like likely it won't even make the agenda of the board meetings because there's so many other things they have to focus on. So it's that uncertainty, even though it might not spill over directly on the nuclear fuel market itself, it does through that kind of dynamics, if you will.
One other point I just want to clarify, when you talk about bilateral agreements, those are agreements that are done between producers and utilities. And what goes on there, nobody knows. Their NDAs are signed. And so there's no obligation on the part of either party to report anything to the price reporters like UXC or Trade Tech. So therefore, even though the number might be 25 or 30 million pounds, it could be significantly more. We just don't know.
No, for sure. It could definitely be more. And in a lot of cases, I mean, it can be specifically in specific cases where utilities say you cannot report this. Otherwise, I think chemical standard practices that we don't resist. I mean, first, you don't report floors and ceilings. If you have a base price component, you may report that if both parties are okay with it, but there will be on a no name basis. But in some cases, it might be that you can't even report anything, not even volumes. Otherwise, you can say, okay, we don't report anything on the price, but we can report aggregate volumes from a bunch of deals and do it on a 6 month basis or at the end of the year or something like that. So it's even though one of the parties may want to report everything to be fully transparent, it takes two parties, right? And you can't break the confidentiality there.
Okay, so we talked about the spot market. The spot market, is that anything up until 1 year?
It depends. One of the reporters has 3 months and the other has 12 months. So it depends on which entities.
Okay. And then the term market, what's the time frame on anything
Anything
contract?
else? Anything else depends
Anything above
essentially.
12 months? Okay, so I want to ask you about RFPs. What's happening in there? Can you speak to any RFPs that are currently out there circulating? And maybe you can speak to the size and the terms.
I would say it's a mixed bag. Some of them are more or less spot, a couple 100,000 pounds here and there, and some of them are 10-year deals with a 500,000 pounds each year. So it's anything in between. And so I would say, and it sort of depends on some of them uranium, some of them are enriched uranium product. But obviously uranium is going to be one of the components, but you also have conversion and enrichment in there. So it really is a mix of everything. And at least from I was on a event in Sydney, it's like a side event to the conference, and Triva Klingbeil at TradeTech was speaking, and she in her in her view, there's quite a number of utilities, both US and non-US, that are on the verge of launching fairly sizable RFPs. So that's Yeah, we'll let the summer show what's happening, but certainly towards the end of the summer around the World Nuclear Association Symposium, we tend to see an activity peak in activity right after that anyway.
And can you quantify when you say fairly large RFPs? Like, are we talking £1 million, £5 million?
Again, it's very difficult because it varies in case to case. I think the Koreans, when they come out, they're fairly public in what they do because it's part of their process, and they tend to be between 6 to 8 million pounds total. They haven't been out in the market for quite some time, so I think everybody's expecting them to come out with at least one fairly soon. And then there was a European utility last year that came out for enriched uranium product to like 12, 14 years and it to the tune of 23 million pounds equivalent. Now that wasn't the right market conditions to launch it in, so they kind of retracted it and did a smaller piece. But at least you know that it's uncovered demand that's going to hit the market at some point, and they're certainly not the only ones.
I'm sorry, how many pounds?
23.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very, very big.
Okay, so let's talk about what's happening with carry trades. And because spot's been trading below the term for quite some time now, a lot of people try to buy in the spot and then sell it in the term at a higher price. Maybe you can just speak to what's happening there and how that is impacting trading activity in both the spot and the term market.
Yeah, earlier in the year, I would say in the first quarter, I think it's like according to UX anyway, I think there was at least 3.5 million pounds that went into these carry trades. And some of them, I mean, then you add the utility purchasing that I mentioned before to that as well on top of it. So there was quite a bit of it. And I think that was definitely what stopped the slide when the spot price was just sliding down further and further. And as soon as you came into the low mid 60s, it definitely stopped, and that was, I would say, single-handedly, that was all carry trades because there was no investors really stepping in. So that you kind of see that that's definitely going to be as long as the term price stays where it is, that is a floor for sure. And then it always depends on financing rates too. But at the current rates, that you can clearly make the case that in the mid 60s, you buy that all day long, and then you can sell it at 80 escalated further a few years out in time. So now we're at mid 70s. That's a different story, but we'll have to see what happens to the term price here in what do we got, a week until the end of the month. So we'll know a little bit more then. But it also depends on how much has been reported. Is there any base price component? Because there can also just be an index, completely index related. If you're a big supplier right now, I'm not sure that you wanna like cap your upside so much, or at least not with the base price itself. We did hear on this side event in Australia that I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, that first time I've heard the ceiling 140. Before it's been 130, 135, and now it's a ceiling that was 140. And unfortunately, Cameco is the only one who's transparent enough to mention it, so that's what they get. Now, I would expect them to be able to get the highest ceilings because they are who they are, and they're in a great jurisdiction. But at least you're hearing the numbers are only going up anyway, so that's an indication, if anything.
Can you speak at all to what's happening in the enrichment and conversion markets in terms of pricing?
Yeah, I mean they've held pretty firm, I would say. And there's very small volumes because just the spot volumes in general in enrichment and conversion is not very big, and conversion spiked up to 100. It's obviously come down quite a bit since then, but still overall, since the invasion of Ukraine now a few years ago, both conversion and enrichment has 4 or 5 times the price of what it was at the time because Russia is such a big player in those markets. They're not a big player in uranium. Uranium doubled, you would say at least, but it certainly hasn't been more. And so there, a lot of the attention was on conversion and enrichment right away, and it clearly is contracting going on at those levels. We haven't seen it come down at least. And new capacity hasn't been added either. That's kind of stuck there. I wouldn't say it's a bottleneck that prevents uranium contracting from happening, but it certainly has been more that's where the attention has been, and now it's gonna start to pivot to uranium because once you buy those components, you obviously need uranium. It doesn't matter how much conversion or enrichment you have, you need uranium to feed into it. So.
Here, as we wrap up, I'm going to put you on the spot now. And where do you see the spot price trading at the end of the year? Are we going to be
Yeah.
above or below $100 a pound?
Oh, that's a good one. 100 sounds like a lot. I know if I've been asked the question over the last month, it's been like, oh, it'll be below, but it might be around 90. But considering the recent events, yeah, let's just say 100 on the nose is a good one. We'll go with that. It's a little bullish. I totally get that. And I gotta be very careful too, because I'm not. Yeah, I'm just not like I have any fancy models, and I'm certainly not a financial advisor or any of that stuff either. But considering where the market is, how tight it is, and to see the advent or recurrence of investors in the space, and knowing that utilities are going to come into the market, it certainly has the potential to go to triple digits. I would say so, but if not by the end of the year, then I would say at some point next year, we're certainly going to be there.
Listen, we just saw the price of oil go from 60 to 75 bucks in a relatively short period of time. So anything can happen. This is what makes the financial market so interesting. So we started this conversation off by discussing some of the places you've been to in the last few months. Where are you going this summer? Any big plans?
No, just back to Sweden. I'm gonna enjoy some nice and quiet in the Swedish forest. So it's I'm looking forward to that. Maybe we'll do a chat from my cabin again. If the market stays interesting, we can check back in August and see what has happened. So
By all means, maybe I'll come to Sweden and we'll do it in person.
yeah, we can certainly do that. Go for a little boat ride and then chat about uranium.
Per, once again, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jimmy. Anytime.